Welcome to Manufacturing Greatness. I'm Trevor Blondeel, your host. After working 30 years in manufacturing, we work with organizations like yours to leverage resources you already have. We have so much going on this year, preparing for the book launch of May of 2027, and we're working on an international research project. But today, we're going to jump right in with a high agency human and the author of that book, Vickie Lanthier. And I pronounce her name properly here, not so much when I first recorded with her. So thanks for your patience. I'm excited that you're here to join in on the conversation. If you work in manufacturing, adversity isn't optional. It's daily, right? Machines break, people call in, orders change, and leaders are expected to stay calm, just like in the movie The Hangover. Everybody stay calm. And we keep production moving, and somehow we motivate their teams through it all, right? Today, we're talking about something called high agency, the ability to move from reaction to intention, from overwhelmed to grounded, and even when everything feels chaotic. And if you're working in manufacturing, you may experience something like that today, I'm sure. Well, my guest here, Vickie Lanthier, welcome to the show, Vickie.
It's brilliant to be here.
You just released a book. So your book is High Agency Human. It's going to be a pre-order. There'll be some links in here, but you and I met through the author community. And, today we're going to translate these ideas directly to the shop floor. How leaders build resilience, create clarity, and help their teams perform when things don't go according to plan, which is kind of every day.
I think that's part of normal life, whether you're on the shop floor or walking the streets.
Yeah, I mean, we were just at a client on Friday and manufacturing plant, and he was just talking about, you know, on the weekends, competitions for the kids. Well, in between, you can get some work done, right? But then is that the right thing to be doing, right? Spending a few hours on the Sunday catching up then, because then you're going to come back in and the plant is, not 7 days a week. It's 24/7 all year round, right? This plant never shuts down. So does that mean the leaders don't ever shut down? Well, that doesn't work. But just a little about yourself. First of all, you're the first person that has served in Canada for our nation. And I really don't, I'm embarrassed to say, I don't know a lot of people that have. And so thank you for doing that, Vickie. And tell our listeners a little bit about your experience, because if they're like me, they may not know a lot about like how do Canadians get into the military.
Yeah, so I served 14 years in the military and spent a total of 26 years with defense in Canada, first
Wow.
serving and then as a consultant. And I had the best career that anyone could ask for, but I did everything I wanted to do in the military. So I started out as communications and spent actually the whole career in communications, but did these side things like traveling all over the place and deploying to other countries and jumping out of airplanes and all that fun stuff. I really loved it. And that started when I was 18.
Wow.
I joined the military. Yeah.
You decide, hey, this is my path.
Yeah, when everyone else is planning their career and what they want out of their lives, I had no idea. So I walked into the recruiting office and there we have it. The adventure began.
Well, I am glad that Canada has, wonderful people like you. At 18, I was so irresponsible, not thinking about anybody else, not thinking about serving. Yeah. I do respect that. And as you get older, you look back and say, well, yeah, if we didn't have people like Vickie, what would we do? So thank you. That's just really, really amazing. And it's cool to meet you and get you on the show and share some credibility here as far as manufacturing, the shop floor, and we talk about being a high agency person. And then you got into nursing as well, and you went through a lot of schooling for that. A lot of people, when I talk to people that are in hospitals and in nursing, they're like, Trevor, the problems in manufacturing and in healthcare they're not that different, right? Burnout's involved, there's stress. We used to say on the shop floor that we're not saving lives out here, but it certainly feels like it if things don't go well.
Yeah, for sure. And I see a lot of crossover between nursing, between the military, between manufacturing. It's all about leadership and teams and how you manage those teams. I think that is the crucial point, no matter where you go.
Yeah, it's like how much are you doing yourself? How much are you just leading your teams? And today we're going to talk about some of the techniques that you've learned in your frameworks to help the listeners. So being a high agency human in manufacturing, what does that look like?
Okay, so let's talk about like a little bit about high agency and low agency to kind of set the framework. So low agency, the typical example that is used is that low agency, life is happening to you. So you complain, life is happening to you, you can never catch a break. It's hard, it's one thing after another. And high agency, you are happening to life. Life is still hard. You still have hard moments, but you are not reactive. You are more prepared and you are quick to have an action bias and you take ownership over those actions. So
Mm,
that's a very broad comparison between high and low agency. And it's not that someone is low agency for life or high agency for life. This is a trait that we nurture. And we could also be low agency in one area in life and high agency in another area of life.
mm.
So
Could be work
this
life and
is,
personal life.
that's right. That's right. Or maybe academic life and work life and, different levels and aspects of our life. But the good news is we have agency to work on our agency. Like we can work on these things, and it's such an important skill for our health, for our well-being, for the world.
Yeah, and translate that to manufacturing. We just get caught up, right? Because it's like, the gotta keep the line going. Oh my gosh, there's an engineering change coming. I didn't know this was coming. Nobody told me.
Yeah.
And then you can just kind of freak out and complain about it. And then the parts, they're not labeled and they're short. And now the line's down. So, just complain, right?
Well,
Nobody.
where we find the complaining, but we also find, well, if I wasn't here, this whole place would go to a mess. I'm the person keeping this place together. I know the right
Mm,
answer, and everybody else is wrong. And by the way, that's not in manufacturing, that's everywhere in every work environment. But there's a lot of ways around that. Dive right
let's go.
into what I consider buffers or what I call buffers in life. So, buffers is a way to mitigate those adverse events, whether you're on the shop floor or your personal life, doesn't matter. And the whole point of a buffer is to use the good times to prepare for the hard times. Okay,
Mm,
so I think that's a vital aspect of our lives is to take action when we're able to take action so that the hard times that come are a little easier. It's just good life
yeah.
math. So the four buffers, how I've put them together is buffer one is secure, which is your financials.
Mm.
Buffer two is strengthen, which is your health and well-being. Three is prepare. That's plans and paperwork. And four is practice, which is your skills and knowledge.
Mm,
So I like to go through each buffer and say how it works in our personal lives and how that works in ideas for manufacturing leaders and floor managers, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, we got
Um,
team leaders,
team,
supervisors,
exactly.
there's support staff. And it's
Yeah.
pretty consistent throughout, Vicky, is that I know, and it's one of my concerns. Our company, Manufacturing Greatness, is partnering with Crossover Solutions to do a study on manufacturing this year in 2026 to figure out like what is going on. And I think this is why I like talking to you. And I've read your book. And when I think about the whole high agency and the whole fact of how am I managing my own strengths and what's happening to me. And I've talked before when I've done some training in manufacturing of victor versus victim, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Is that you're either a victim of your circumstances, but then you can't be the person that just is going to be trying to control everything and lead everything and be the hero either. And we got to kind of balance that. But when I really think about this recent conversation with the plant manager, is yeah, when I read your book, I'm thinking about myself, looking in the mirror a little bit of like, okay, so kind of rushing before this podcast recording. I knew this was coming, like how did I really, manage this? And where I could have just created, maybe a few more buffers. But yeah, so let's go to that first one.
Sure. And we're going to dive into something that I think you're going to love because we're going to dive right into
Ooh,
my viewpoints on leadership and team management that I think will be very applicable.
I like it.
We can have a good conversation. But let's start with buffer one, secure, which is our mostly our financials and how we spend and how we can build our buffer that way. In our
Hmm.
personal lives, this is a no-brainer. It's your emergency funds, it's your retirement savings and your retirement plans. It's your not only your emergency funds, but what's your health insurance and all these different aspects of how we spend our money, how we invest our money, how we create our money, so that when something goes wrong, which it inevitably does, like we get sick or there's a job loss or, the car breaks down, that when that happens, you could take 6 months to pivot. You
Mm,
could replace the car. If there's a flood, you could deal with the flood. Like all these things happen in our personal lives. So in the book, I talk more from a personal level how to build that. But in business, this looks like having enough payroll for the next to cover 6 months. It looks like not spending, not overspending your expense accounts. It
mm-hmm,
looks like using your physical space in other ways
mm,
and creating more of an income. It's one that is like an aspect of personal
yeah.
buffer building that I talk about in using your home as a source of revenue. This looks like creating a culture of not overspending so that you're leading by example with your employees. That means that Doug doesn't drive in on Monday saying, "Hey, look at the hot new car I got. It's on lease and I just spent all this money," as the team leader without also articulating, "Man, I've saved for 6 months and worked over hours
Mm,
for this. Me and my wife didn't make this decision to buy this fancy car until we had our emergency savings." So it really looks like that leading by example so that new workers coming in and our new younger generations come in don't misinterpret overspending with success.
mm-hmm,
So that they know what actually came before that, and that what came before that is their goals, not the fancy car.
yeah.
It also looks like bringing in financial advisors and retirement planners to the workplace to help your employees plan for these things. And I know that Brian talked about that a little.
The
And
last episode. And
yeah,
that is interesting, right? Because I had somebody that listened to Brian's episode and then was talking a little bit about, privacy, right? Like people may not want to talk to people at their workplace about their personal finances, but that just seems like that's like the older taboo version, right? Of like you don't talk about money, right? Nobody talks about money, but but we
true. And
it's okay to.
you don't have to share everything about money, but maybe if you're a leader, you talk about the aspects of your life where it's not too personal
Mm-hmm.
in your spending. Just set those tiny examples for your team on what's considered quote cool and not cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Because if manufacturing wants to move forward and we want to attract Gen Z, now I'm talking to a Canadian, I can say Z, and we look at it and say, well, hey, here's what we're offering, right? So the people that are coming into the workforce are thinking like, how am I going to afford a house? How am I going to make this work? Then, especially with manufacturing offering shift work and sometimes not the best opportunities on flex work, but how else can we kind of have a little more talk about that stability? Production team too, let's say, or the maintenance team, right? We got a budget. How do we manage this at home? How do we manage it here? Right? Like if we're not looking at our budgets at work, because there was a time period where I wasn't looking at it. We were just focused here and hopefully I don't go over budget. But I was probably doing that at home too, right? So I can see how this can kind of ebb and flow, right? For manufacturing, the better agency we have in our team members, the better that the leaders demonstrating those behaviors of being secure and being open about that. And I like getting in front of it too, right? It's okay to buy that car, right? Like, but like think about the perceptions that might land, right? Like that we're just kind of going beyond our means and where it's not. It's just, hey, you know what? This is the discipline. This is how I saved.
Being a leader, a team leader, a supervisor is not just about managing your team. It's providing the perception and example that you want your team to emulate.
Mm,
They have to see you. You have to act with integrity at all times. You have to have high character. You have to have leadership skills, and you have to understand the impact of the perception to your team.
mm. Good for people to think about hiring too, right? Am I hiring a high agency human? Like,
Yeah.
is this person, open? to these conversations. Not that they got to have their life entirely together, because I think manufacturing provides some of that, right? It provides that financial security that, we can make these products in Canada and in the United States, and we can have people that are here long term. We're going to continue to need this. We do provide security, and we just got to manage it in the building and at home as well.
Yeah. And it's okay to admit mistakes. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about giving your employees the chance to see what paths are available to them. So if you bring in a financial advisor, you're not sharing their financial information. What you're doing is sitting down with the employee and say, here's what's offered at the company or at the manufacturing plant. Here's our,
Mhm.
if they do 401k matching or something else, here's what that can give you. Here's what you should save. This is how you divide your finances. That just encourages people to be proactive with their finances. It also helps them save for a bad day, which always
Mhm.
comes around the corner. And it gives them agency over their finances, their outcomes, and it might encourage them to start working towards management if they see a
Mm.
path that they like as well. If you work your way up to a team lead, this is what it could give you. If you work your way up to a manager, this is what it could give you and your family. Showing those possibilities is important because it means you're encouraging the employee to stay and saying, hey, I don't want to hire you so that you could stay in this position forever. I want to hire
Mhm.
you and I want to nurture you as an employee and as a leader. And we are going to nurture that leadership and let you grow with the company.
That's ideal. In reality, sometimes what happens is, hey, I'm making $20 an hour. I can go to 22, 23 if I'm a team leader. So
Yeah.
I'm in a little bit of financial trouble. So I'll just try to get that job. Right. Which is what and I'm sure that my brain's done that in the past. But what I should have been doing was just like, hey, I'm secure where I'm at. I have security as a foundation here. Yeah, cool. But like, I'm really wanting this position because it's just right for me right now. And I feel secure in kind of where I'm at, and I'm ready for this role. And you're doing
Yeah.
it for the right reasons, right? Because I've seen that where people kind of take that job and it's not really in their desire, but it's, hey, I know it's going to get me a few bucks.
True. And what are we doing as a company to nurture their leadership as they take on that role?
Right.
I love leadership. I could talk about that all day. Okay, so the second buffer is strengthen, which is health and well-being. So in our personal lives, that means first mastering the mundane, which is nutrition, movement, stress management, restorative sleep, social connection, and avoidance of risky substance use.
That's a neat term.
Yeah, avoidance. And then, second is having all your health checks done and your health appointments. And the third is to optimize after that. In business, this is again where we get to lead by example and set up the environment to promote health within our employees. So things like rethinking the food at break stations, whether you promote or discourage a drinking culture, whether you promote or discourage walks or reading at lunch and actually taking breaks. Do you allow calls after work hours? Do you reach out to your
Mm,
employees after work hours? Are there set work hours? Do you have on-call bonuses or anything like that? Like not having that protected time off matters in the overall well-being of the employee. What about having men's groups and resources? We do not have enough of our male population having close friend groups where they
mhm.
could discuss the hardships together. And that for men is a little trickier because it's easier for us to open up as humans when we're side by side and not face to face. So, can you create something at work where men get together and are not faced to each other and saying, hey, we're going to talk about this topic? But maybe it's a group where they work on woodworking, or it's a workout, or it's a repair
Mhm.
shop, something where they're doing something and conversation flows naturally. What about days allocated or financial support for your female employees who want to freeze their eggs because they're focused on their career and moving up the ladder? And we all know that, especially nowadays, our egg quality as females is degrading at a lower age than in older times.
Really?
So freezing our eggs in our 20s is important if that's something you want down the road, but want to go up the career ladder. Nowadays, our egg quality has changed so much that IVF is needed at a lower and lower age. There's females in their 30s that need IVF. So, as a company, is there days allocated for that time off for either egg freezing or going through IVF? Both are a big deal for your female employees and families. Are there resources and support available for females going through menopause? Also, a very hard change for that demographic. And usually, that demographic at that age is going into your supervisory and management roles.
Mm-hmm.
What skills do
Interesting.
they have? For men and women, do all your employees have suicide training, suicide prevention training, so that they can recognize the signs and know what to do and who to report to if they see a fellow employee struggling, which is vital. I've actually had this happen in one of my workplaces where one of our team members did commit suicide, and there were signs day before, but it wasn't recognized. This
Mm.
is important. We could prevent this. And if you don't hear from your employees in a day or 2 days or 3 days, is there a process or mechanism in place so that you do a buddy check or a wellness check if you don't hear from them in X amount of days?
Yeah, and that seems like common sense, but I've heard some leaders talk, oh, it's a no show, no call, 3 days. That's a termination. Has anybody called them? Like, did we forget the whole human touch here? Yeah,
Yeah.
and we talk about women in manufacturing and running that between Canada. It's around that 25, I think, to 28% range. But like freezing eggs and stuff like you just talked about, I didn't even know about that. So it's like there's people at the table that just don't know. But we can talk to our team and knowing that, hey, when we have some of these buffers in place, when we have some of these conversations, it's like, hey, we can do a lot. So it's really kind of like one of the drivers of this podcast is to say, you got to go slow to go fast sometimes. And we can bring so much to manufacturing in North America when we think about our supervisors and our frontline leadership that these are the people that are carrying a lot of that burden. And like, how are they doing? Right? Can we invest a little bit of time to have this group to have this conversation? And there's a scale, right, where people can kind of go. But where I see it right now is it's just you punch in at 7, you punch out at 3. There's some mandatory training, but we're just missing so much, and we're missing that opportunity for leaders like even like me to even think about it.
Yeah. And you don't have to implement everything at once. You could have a 5 or 10 year plan where you trickle it in. That's fine too. The idea is to have more buffers, a more robust workplace and environment that can handle things going wrong at the manufacturing plant and things going on wrong in your employees' personal life.
A quick little break here. If you're a plant manager, supervisor, contributor in manufacturing or adjacent industries like construction and logistics, then we have a newsletter for you. And it provides insights, that are similar to this podcast, but they're different. And they've got tactical resources that you can actually take and put in your facility today for continuous improvement. We're going to be going weekly, and I'm excited for you to sign up for it. It's completely free, and you just click the link at the top of the show notes, and you can sign up now. Well, let's get back to the show. So how do
And
we do
you,
that? Like one of the things I saw you had was around pulling the emergency brake, right? Like for a manufacturing leader, like it seems like everything's urgent. I was talking to somebody else that I was coaching, and they're like, "Hey, I'm just going to call you, and I got to get back to the line. I can't really do our session." And I'm like, they're working 12 hours a day. They have kids, they have responsibilities, they have financial commitments, and it's like, how do I help them put on the emergency brake for a minute and just stop for a minute?
yeah, a lot of times I say when hard times hit to pull the emergency brake with what I call a reduction. And usually sometimes I'll say a radical reduction or a ruthless reduction because there is no give in this. But it really means maybe for the day,
Yeah.
you do the bare minimum of what you need to do in the day so that you could get ahead in other areas. In our personal lives, a reduction means reducing life and your environment down to the bare minimum so that you could get over whatever health challenge or disaster, financial crisis that you're in at the moment.
Hmm.
But in business, it might mean You can't perform at your max all the time and have no space to build these buffers. Because what it means, if you're going 110% all the time and something breaks, then it's going to shut you down for an extended period of time because you have no contingencies in place, no buffers in place. So maybe the proactive approach is to operate at a minimum for a set period of time that isn't going to hurt necessarily your production, but you could use that time to put in one of these buffers or get ahead in one of these buffers.
And I think a lot of it comes to just having, and this is why we do talk a lot to the plant leader, right? Because if you're a team member or team leader, sometimes you're just getting tasks and direction, and then people are just hoping, man, I hope Vickie gets everything done. I can see that she's moving, and I'm just gonna hope that she doesn't
But that
crash.
we see that everywhere. Like I see that on the long-term care facilities that I work in as a nurse. It's the same thing, or the different nursing contracts that I take. It's 24/7 care. You've got to go. We're all overburdened. There's not enough structure in place. Sometimes there's not enough support in place. And you get in that mentality of like, I just need to survive this shift. And we
Mhm.
just need to meet our quota.
Absolutely.
We just need to meet our quota. I need to survive it. And then it's someone else's problem for the next shift. And then I'll come in again and away we go.
I think that's what you're saying through your work and your experience is that you do need to advocate for yourself, and you need to just kind of do it in such a way that, hey, you know what? I need to take a half an hour break. Like I'm at my wits here. I need cover me, you know, and that's difficult sometimes, right? Because you're kind of like, oh, well, Trevor needs a break. I don't get a break. But I think that's part of the change, right? If we're not seeing it at the top, then you're gonna have to advocate for yourself, and it's going to be for the benefit of the company. Because the more
Yeah.
we can do that, the more we can, like you said, if the plant manager is there 14 hours a day and not spending time with their family, then that's just sending a nasty message, right? When we're talking about recruitment, retention, engagement, whew, not attractive.
I'll be brutal in this next statement. If your business, if your workplace, if anything that you manage or supervising is working at 110% and your people are burning out and it's gum and duct tape everywhere and everybody needs to be in their surge, not really a surge, it's a steady state, but at a surge capacity, which is not maintainable. If you're operating at that, you are operating a bad business, an unsustainable bad business.
Mm,
It's going to break. You are going to run through your employees as they burn out. You're not going to have any retention. The younger generations aren't going to want to stay there. Accidents will happen. People's health will deteriorate. And maybe something's going to happen with the business. It's a bad practice. So I get that you think that you need to be continuously in a surge, but you just, there's something wrong in that operating in the way that it is set up, that you are
mhm.
continually doing that, either culturally or your systems or your environment, whatever it is. But that's more like we need to seek out one of Mike's fix this next in
Yeah.
business, not me for agency. I could just advocate for the leaders and the employees. Shall we go to buffer three?
Yes. Let's hear
All right. Buffer three is prepare, which is paperwork and plans. At home, what I encourage people to do is have all their first aid kits, their car emergency kits. Do they have a fire escape plan? Do they have a no communications plan with their family and loved ones? Do they do annual home repairs? Are their wills updated? Your
it.
power of attorney,
Mhm.
your advanced care directives, which
Whew.
aren't done as much as people should be doing, and people our age and younger should have them, not just the elderly. What
Yeah.
about your in case of death information? What about your funeral and burial costs? That is the personal side of plans and paperwork. On the work side, I would say, what are you doing so that your employees are able and encouraged to have all these things done at home?
Mm,
Because these are things that come into play when a hardship happens. And if you don't have them prepared, you're only contributing to that hardship instead of lessening it and managing it. You're adding, it's like a self-inflicted wound. because you haven't prepared this stuff. So at a business, I would say, what is your communications plan? If there's a disaster in the community, is there a plan with your employees and your supervisors to check on each other? Is there a plan of who reports to work and what that necessary work is?
Mm,
Is there a plan to support each other through that emergency? On normal days, I would say, can you partner with local businesses to provide home services to employees at a special rate? Can you give resources for employees to look or workshops on wills, POAs, advanced care directors,
mhm.
directives, and so on? That's how I see that working within the business.
Yeah, because we gotta again, probably said in this podcast many times, but like I had like, leave your emotions at the door. We have work to do, right? Like I was focused on, I was getting measured by the results of that shift, right? That hour. Hey, Trevor, your line's red. It's not, not run out to the line and react, right? Where it's just kind of like, hey, you know what? If I could just kind of step back and think like, is everybody in their position, like in this team, are they secure? Are they prepared? Are we having these conversations? And I think it's like safety. When we practice really good safety at work, then we're going to be safer at home, right? We're going to think about putting
Yeah.
on the safety glasses. If it's just really strict there, it feels really weird to grind something without safety glasses when, you're doing that all the time at work. So when you kind of balance that both together, right, is that, hey, for the lines, we need to prepare as well, right? Like when is our preventative maintenance and what is our plan for capital recovery? There's just so many aspects. So you can take that whole prepare and we can kind of put that to the line. But to do that, we got to kind of put those brakes on again because like you talk about building buffers before adversity hits. And so like, the most important buffers leaders should be strengthening right now in manufacturing, right? Like what would that be? Spikes in demand or, it gets hot in Ontario in the summertime and, our production's not the same. And sometimes we would just kind of hope that everyone would just work through the heat, and then we started making plans and preparing and it got a lot better. Break relief crews. What a concept.
Indeed, right? More sustainable. You could just make the perfect segue into buffer four, which
All
is
right.
practice. On the personal side, practice is skills and knowledge acquisition, the stuff that really helps in an emergency or a hard time, and stuff that I think we're missing with the younger generation, whether that's home cooked meals and preserves, or firearm
Mm,
safety and hunting, or if it's first aid or mental health first aid, or troubleshooting a generator, or personal cybersecurity, or leadership in team management, nonverbal and verbal communication. On the business side, what about monthly lunch and learns? Or what skills do your employees have that you don't know they have that they could actually share
yeah.
with each other? A business is a mini community, and we don't talk to our neighbors enough to know that Dave two doors down is great with tinkering with mechanical stuff, or that I don't know, Mike is really great cook or that Susie's a doctor. We've got to know who's in our team and what strengths they have to leverage in these hard times. More importantly, I think is this is where leadership comes in. And this would be my big point for any business or manufacturing plant out there is how are we nurturing leadership within our companies and businesses? How are we taking those first hires and giving them exposure in small increments of responsibility and professional development, not only from within, because I think it's a fallacy for our team leads and supervisors and managers to do all the training themselves, because then we're not
Mm,
getting, now we're in a bubble and we're not actually promoting growth. We're
yeah.
just trying to mold someone into little mini me's, which I don't think is great.
Yeah, we had that where we got really strict and we had training within industry. It was a training program where the team members on the line are trained to do the training. And I remember as a person running the show, when my boss kind of came by and heard from someone that a team leader was doing the training instead of the trainer, it was like that was not, I wasn't supporting what we were saying, right? And it's kind of
Yeah.
like, hey guys, that's a good reset. I'm glad you called that out. We need to get back to just let those experts do their training, engage them more, bring other people into it. Because, because if we want to, what I'm hearing is, right, is that if we want to build that resilience, we got it when the times are better, we got to practice having some of those difficult conversations. Because that's my whole stick is all around, deeper conversations gets results. And what you're saying is that they do, and you need to do them when it's not in the chaotic time, when it is a better time, so that when the tougher time comes and you got to have that conversation. Well, I've practiced that a little bit, right? We've talked about how to have those harder conversations. We've talked about when the line goes down, how to approach for help. And a lot of people aren't having those conversations.
We're also not practicing enough so that when a real hard time happens, you're operating on automatic, subconscious muscle memory instead
Hmm.
of with still like some critical skills. But what I'm talking about is if you take these new hires and junior leaders and actual develop their leadership through maybe letting Tom organize the family day or someone else, Julie could take a look at what the supervisor's ordering for everyone for the next stage of production. And they get to provide some feedback on that. So they have a say. You're nurturing junior leadership that way. But you could also do it through your first aid training and fire drills, which everybody does.
Hmm.
When you do those first aid trainings and fire drills, is it only the supervisors running them all the time?
Mm.
Because it's not always going to be a supervisor that's in that area of the plant. Or maybe that supervisor gets knocked out or
Yeah.
incapacitated in some other way. So, are you running your training drills so that the most junior person and the most senior person could all do it and all become either the leader or the follower, depending on how the situation dictates? If the fire happens at the plant and Tommy, who's got 3 years in but has done the training with you, takes charge of that situation and starts the emergency process like he's supposed to, is Sally, the supervisor, going to come in and just run over Tommy's decisions, or is she going to come in and say, Tommy's got it?
Vickie, yeah, it's like you're on the manufacturing floor, right? Like this is what we need. This is the direction in the industry we need to go on. This is what I'm advocating. Just reading your book, and thank you for the work that you do. And it's a lot, as we both know, to write a book, right? Like you've been working on this
It
for
is.
years.
Yeah,
You've shared a lot of your vulnerable personal stories of your own struggles in there. So I highly encourage our listeners to check it out, right? And yeah, it's not a manufacturing book. It's a book about you. It's about a book about you being that high agency person and how do you make a few changes in there. And I think the stories for me, you do beautiful storytelling. I just love how you describe situations. You really took me there. It's just when you pick up, you just start reading, and it's coming out on what date?
it's
March
coming out.
March 24th, and
Yeah,
pre-orders available now. I was able to
yeah.
read the PDF version. I'm looking forward to getting the hard copy in my hand.
I really want this book for the everyday folks to know how to manage adversity in the moment, how to prepare for the next hard time that's going to come, how to increase your personal agency, or also that you could create enough space in your life to live a big, fulfilled life. That's what I want for folks, not, you know, for a broken down car to ruin your month and not be able to get
Yeah.
groceries and so on. So I am taking everything from the book and applying it to my own life this year and sharing that on social media. And for the pre-orders, if you pre-order and email me the receipt, then I will share that challenge and checklist with you so that you could have your own high agency year and start preparing for the next hard times and giving yourself enough space for the good times.
So we'll have links in the show notes. There'll be links to be able to pre-order your book. And then how do they best follow you on social?
All the information is at highagencyhuman.com, so they could find a lot of stuff there. And online, you can mostly find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, either at Vickie M. Lanthier, which should be in the show notes because it's not an easy last name, or at High Agency Human, whichever.
Well, if you lead in manufacturing, adversity, it isn't optional, right? It's daily. What we talked about today is that high performance doesn't come from pushing harder, right? We've done that for a long time. It really comes up with that showing up with intention, building habits, like you said, with the practice and preparing, choosing ownership over reaction so that we're not a victim, that we're high agency. And yeah, we just kind of start small. You've given all kinds of tidbits today on the podcast, and there's so much in the book. But I like the higher level thinking of like just manufacturing as an industry. What can we do to get curious, strengthen those relationships, build those buffers? And I just want people to hear you, Vickie, and read this and hear our conversation and remember, the way that we show up sets the tone for how our team performs. It's not about driving harder, and there's just such better ways. And you've shared that with us today. So thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Trevor. I appreciate it.
Thanks for sticking around and joining us today. As we mentioned in the middle of the show, we have that newsletter that would be great if you signed up. So it's absolutely free. The link is below, or you can go to manufacturinggreatness.com and scroll down to the bottom and click newsletter there. It'll give you a way that if you have questions or concerns, or if there's insights that I could share with you, or you can share with me, you just hit reply and we can, connect like just two people talking about solving problems. It goes directly to me. I'd love to get your feedback on anything or even get your questions because those are the real problems that we can address and solve. I look forward to hearing from you.